Back here, 615 Sessions podcast presented by Two Rivers Ford, brought to you as always by A to Z Sports and A to Z Sports Nashville.com. Jon Burton of NewsChannel 5, the Greg Pogue and Jon Burton Show, 9 to 11 weekdays on WNSR. JB, what's good, buddy? I appreciate you hanging out today.
Absolutely, Buck. Anytime, my brother. How's everything with you?
Life is good. We're Rona-free. Football is back. We're 2 weeks away from kickoff, baby. I'm living, JB. We're going to make it.
I'm fired up, man. I'm ready for some NFL ball. It's going to be an unusual year this year. But, yeah, it's funny. I woke up yesterday, and I said to myself, wow, the Titans play 2 weeks from tonight. And also in the undercard, my team, the Giants, take on the Steelers. So we got two Monday Night Football games coming up in less than 2 weeks. And it's hard to believe the NFL is here. It's just been such a crazy offseason with coronavirus and no preseason games. I'm one of the crazy – I'm weird like that. I kind of like preseason games. I like to see what the team's going to look like, before the regular season, or at least get an idea. I haven't been able to go to as many practices as I would like. And so I can't really say I got a real feel for this Titans team. But based on last year and who's coming back, I think I do. But – you don't know what you don't know, Buck. So it's going to be very interesting once they finally hit the field and start playing games for real.
Yeah, it's been just a cluster this entire, and, for everybody and for much greater reasons than to not be able to watch preseason football. But you're right. It's disrupted in a way, not to admit this to the audience, but in a way that's kind of jarring for me. I feel unprepared for a football season where we've had nothing to do but time. We've had nothing to do but sit around and wait for football to start. And now, with less than 2 weeks to go before they head out to Denver for Monday Night Football, I'm just kind of sitting here still trying to figure out who's actually on the roster this year and kind of sorting through all that just to have them be cut here in about 4 or 5 days is the time that you're hearing this podcast. And I say this, and it'll probably not be true because I'm sure I will get to bitching at some point later on when preseason football games actually do return to our lives. But I don't want to take these things for granted anymore because there's a big knowledge gap for me in a way that I find to be very counterproductive.
Yeah, and like I said, I understand preseason games for most people. It's not really made for fans. Okay, the NFL owners will try to trick you into saying that it's for the fans because season ticket holders have to pay for those 2 home preseason games. They have to pay full price. But, listen, I was in Pittsburgh for a long time and I covered Bill Cowher. And Bill Cowher used to say it every summer. Coaches need these preseason games to really evaluate their talent. And I've seen guys, and I'm sure you have as well, make teams based on a great last preseason game. A guy that was probably going to get cut, but he goes out and he balls out in that final preseason game when most people are ignoring it. The coaches are paying attention because it's an opportunity for these bubble guys to A, make the team that they're currently trying to make, or B, put some good stuff on tape so that they'll get picked up off waivers. So, I put a lot of stock into the preseason. I understand, like I said, it's non-alcoholic beer for fans, but it really is a good way to evaluate who you have on a roster. And coaches find these games very valuable. And when you look at what the Titans are doing now, the fact that they don't have any preseason games, they really haven't had a lot of live scrimmages from what I understand. And so now you're talking about the first time you're going to be tackling guys to the ground and getting up and recovering from that and getting ready for another play. You're going to be in Mile High Denver, Colorado when that happens. So it's going to be interesting. Some coaches, have done the 11-on-11 scrimmage. Vrabel has basically, as far as I know, chosen really not to do that. Some contact drills, more of the thud type thing, but it's going to be interesting. I'll be very interested to see what this game is going to look like in a couple of weeks on a Monday night in Denver.
Yeah, it's going to be something curious indeed, as Turron Davenport, TD, the OG, joins.
What's up, TD?
The chat. What's up, big dog?
Not much, man. Just had to make a couple last-minute additions to a post that I've been working on for a really long time, and I'm excited about it. So stay tuned on that one.
At
ESPN, read it, as always.
At ESPN.com is, of course, where you can read our buddy Turron Davenport. At @TDavenport_NFL on the socials. Turron, we were just talking about the lack of preseason, how I feel almost like there's a knowledge gap to my game with how quickly all of this has arrived on our doorstep, still trying to ramp up without preseason games, without the ability to actually study these dudes outside of the practice field to kind of make things feel like a normal football season. We talked about this many times around here. Nothing is normal at this point. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about the rookies, evaluations that Turron, JB, and I have made on these guys at practice. Vic Beasley, Jadeveon Clowney, Yannick Ngakoue, the Jags dumpster fire, many, many things on the NFL horizon. What you got for me on the Jags, Turron? You're sitting there shaking your head. The people who are listening can't see it, but the YouTube audience is chuckling along. What your initial thoughts on what the hell is happening in the AFC South?
I wish I could have gotten with you before we started this and had you have a video on tap, because when I think of the Jacksonville Jaguars, it goes back to the Rocky IV days, when the trainer said, "Throw the damn towel, Rock! Throw the towel!" That's all I'm thinking of. Like, I hate to think like a team is actually tanking, and I don't really think they are, but I mean, good gracious, they are just taking away every chance they have of winning. But I will say, Raquel Armstead is a guy, I think that's how you pronounce it. I forget his last name, but he's a Temple back. And I know a lot of teams had interest in him. In fact, Tony Dews, the Titans running backs coach, he was in Temple to work him out last year. So I know he's back there, and they have another guy out of Nebraska that I think should help out. But it's just like, man, it's almost like they're throwing the towel.
Right. By the way, the actor that played the trainer, his name was Tony Burton. No relation, but he actually passed away a couple of years back. So rest in peace to Tony Burton. Yeah, I remember that scene well. I know every scene from all the Rocky films. So good job by you, TD.
Rocky's
like, should I do it or not?
Let's all collectively take a moment, pour one out for Tony Burton.
Yeah, Tony Burton, we love you, man.
Here on the 615 Sessions podcast. All right, let's start with the most immediate news today at practice. JB, I don't know if you were out there or not, Turron. I'm not sure how good of an angle you had on what took place with Nate Davis and Derek Roberson both having to leave practice with, it appears, both leg injuries. The extent we are not certain. It sounds like there may be better news on Nate Davis, or at least more news on Nate Davis at this point. They've been injury-free thus far. Right. It is a shame for them from a team perspective, for them to have been hamstrung, no pun intended, by these two for guys that they're going to need, frankly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the first thing, and it's funny because I was talking with somebody literally about the outside linebacker depth, right? And it was during 7-on-7, but I believe Roberson was over there in O-line, D-line drills, not inside run, but kind of like that. And it just, like I looked over, and the person I was talking to looked over, and they're like, well, that changes things. And sure enough, it was Roberson on the cart. Now, I watched as they carted him to the building. It was kind of a football length away from me, but I could see when they got close how, he was in pain. And one of his legs, like when you're hurt and you kind of shake your leg and your foot is going back and forth like that, like you're anxious. That's how he was on the cart. And you hate to see that. And then when he got helped off, he had his arm around, the team pastor as well as one of the trainers, and they helped him in. But it was the left leg that he was very ginger. He was favoring it. So that's that one. And then the second one happened during it was kind of like a team period. And I just all of a sudden you saw Nate Davis limp over to the defensive sideline. And he went down, and then they just brought the cart over before anybody even got to look at it. They fired the cart up, brought it over, and they took him off, and he was in serious pain. You could see the grimace, and it was audible, every time he had to put a little bit of pressure on that right leg. It was audible. But, you know, for the sake of those guys, man, you know, knowing that they work hard, knowing all the stuff that they put in, knowing that they're young, knowing that they have bright careers, I really hope that everything's okay with them.
And also, TD, just knowing the fact that the Titans are relying on both of these guys. And, you know, you add that to the fact that, you know, A.J. Brown's missed some practices, and two rookies that, you know, this team's going to be counting on. Darrington Evans and Christian Fulton have missed some practice time. And, you know as well as I do, you guys know as well as I do, excuse me, this, you know, this practice time is valuable. Again, you know, we talk about it ad nauseum. With no preseason games, you got to get your on-field reps. And so, yeah, I was not at practice today, but great job describing what you saw at TD. And yeah, you certainly hope these guys are going to be all right, not going to be out long term. But based on the way you described it looks like they're going to miss some time, and that's critical because, like I said, the Titans were definitely counting on both these guys.
Yeah,
it's just such trash for them to have to work their way through all of this stuff to get through the COVID offseason, the COVID preseason, the COVID camp, and now with less than 2 weeks to go, this be the case. And so we wish them the best success or the best wishes just in terms of their recovery, and hopefully it's shorter term more than anything else. Let's go through some other issues though, because there's a lot of moving parts right now. Everybody's dealing with a lot of uncertainty, but the Titans have some particularly intriguing, I don't know if they're full-on problems yet, but there are things that you observe that draw the attention, three in particular that I want to talk about with you guys. Which is the most concerning issue to our guests, Jon Burton and Turron Davenport, here with us on the 615 sessions? Of these three, we're going to talk about all three. Darrington Evans and Christian Fulton, the rookie running back and corner, now having missed 6 days of practice at this point. We do not know what their injuries are. There was some speculations about Evans, it being a hamstring just based on where he was grabbing his leg at that stadium practice. So we have that first and foremost, two rookies who figure to factor in to what they want to do. Isaiah Wilson, Turron, we noticed this at practice yesterday. You pointed this out while we were watching offensive and defensive line individual work. This man is very, very raw, I think is a kind way to put it. He's losing snaps to Ty Sambraio, which is a much greater concern when Dennis Kelly is not on the practice field, the Titans rookie first-round tackle. Then the pass rush, third to round out the top three issues. Vic Beasley still not on the field. I heard reports that he was seen walking today into the bubble gingerly by some accounts, which would indicate some form of injury. They keep him on NFI. They don't have to put him on an injury report when the season starts, so Vrabel can continue to play this shell game with us every time that we ask him about it. No Beasley, no Clowney, lacking pass rush, especially without Derek Roberson. TD, which of those three hits you the hardest?
Yeah, I'm probably going to say the pass rush, but I think it's heavily correlated to Christian Fulton as well, because I really believe that if he didn't have that injury, when they take the field against the Broncos on Monday Night Football, he was going to be the starting nickel corner. That's my opinion, you know, just based on some of the things I saw, the way they're matching him up with Adam Humphries so much in one-on-ones. But I say that because I firmly believe that this team is really going to rely on the back-end help in the front. And, you know, Deion Sanders and Warren Sapp, they have this thing where they always go back and forth. The back-end helps the front end, according to Deion. The front end helps the back end, according to Warren Sapp. Fact of the matter is they help each other. So really what's going to happen, these guys on the outside and even at the nickel, they have to get up in the receiver's face. They have to cause that chatter, that hesitation at the line of scrimmage to disrupt the timing, which will give these guys like Kamale Correa and, you know, Harold Landry, DeAndre Walker, it will give these guys extra time to get to the quarterback because, quite frankly, they don't have that guy that you would just say, you know what, I'm going to put him out there. He's going to go get the quarterback. I don't care who's blocking him. They don't have that. So they have to find ways to develop that pressure. So the pass rush is a big issue for me. Vic Beasley, this whole situation is just I don't really know how to put it kindly, so I'll just say it's just and shake my head. But I mean, it's a mess, right? And the guy was supposed to come in here and be someone that would really help out. And I mean, there's still a whole season left that he could do that, but it just hasn't gotten off to the right start.
Yeah, I got to agree with TD on this and go with the pass rush. I mean, that's a big reason why the Titans didn't go to the Super Bowl. You know, they blew 2 10-point leads in that AFC Championship game, mainly because they gave Patrick Mahomes all day to throw. And if that guy has time to throw, he's going to kill you. We know that. He's the best player in the NFL, in my opinion. And this Vic Beasley thing, I agree with you, TD. I just, you show up late and then you can't pass your physical, and there doesn't seem to be any sign of this guy practicing. You're starting to wonder if he's going to be available for that Monday night game. And as Turron said, there really isn't that guy that you can count on to get to the quarterback no matter what. Harold Landry started off great last year. I remember midseason last year saying this guy might make the Pro Bowl. He tailed off. Correa is kind of a spotty player. He's good. He's got some skills. I have no idea what we have in DeAndre Walker yet, because I haven't really seen him perform, other than practice. So, you look at Darrington Evans, and I know we're going to get into that. I think that's why they brought in Jeremy McNichols. I think, he provides some good depth. He knows the system a little bit. And I agree with Turron as well about Christian Fulton, that he's going to be a guy that they're going to really count on in those nickel situations. But if I got to pick one, it's got to be pass rush, because that was supposed to be a top priority for this team this offseason, to improve the pass rush. And right now there's just too many unknowns.
Yeah, we'll circle back to the other two issues that we discussed. I'd like to stay here because Yannick Ngakoue takes $6 million less in a trade that I think is well below what his value was to get the hell out of Jacksonville, but he's going to go play for $12 million a year once this gets restructured with the Minnesota Vikings. And I'm sitting here looking at this. You hear the Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports report today about Jadeveon Clowney. The market for him does not exist north of $15 million as we get closer and closer to this thing. If you're going to pay Yannick Ngakoue $12 million a year, who is clearly a superior pass rusher, maybe not all-around player, but I think that argument could very easily be made as well, Turron. What is Clowney worth to this team if Ngakoue is getting 12?
I think if Ngakoue is getting 12, Clowney's worth 14. And I say that because, in my opinion, when you're paying that level of money to a player, it's not just about what he could do, it's about how he could help others be better. And I personally feel that Clowney is a guy that would make other players around him better, especially more than what Ngakoue could do. And look, Ngakoue he's a really good player. And I think what he does, as far as being used on those stunts, that works parallel with what the Titans like to do on defense. But I feel like even from a pass rush perspective, I think Clowney is a better player than Ngakoue as a pass rusher, even, although the sacks don't reflect that. I just say you got to look at the pressures, and you got to look at how disruptive he is. And I think really that makes him a better player than Ngakoue. So by all means, if Ngakoue could get $12 million, and man, listen, I'll tell you this much, with that Vikings defensive line coach, he's going to be vicious on the opposite side of Neil Hunter. But I still feel that if Ngakoue's getting 12, Clowney should get every bit of 14 to 15 million. And it's not even a conversation, in my opinion.
JB, it's between the Titans and the Seahawks at this point. And he's already turned the Seahawks down because they came in under what he wanted, and it's being reported at $12 million. He turned down deals from the Browns for 1, 2, and 3 years that he was getting closer to $18 million. This dude can't get the hell out of his own way. And now I think at this point, he's just got to decide what makes the most sense to him. I don't think this is a Buzz Cook issue. People are talking about him wanting to fire his agent, Buzz Cook. This dude, Buzz Cook, is trying to do everything he can to make sure that Clowney doesn't lose any more money at the cost of Jadeveon Clowney.
Yeah, and, I think a lot of people think that way based on what Logan Ryan did, right? He fired his agent and then, wound up getting a deal with the Giants, kind of a homecoming for him, Rutgers guy from Jersey and that kind of thing.
You excited about that? You fired up?
Well, listen, Xavier McKinney's going to be out for a while, and DeAndre Baker is on the exempt list. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's a young secondary. His experience and leadership is going to help, plus the fact that he can play corner and or safety. So, yeah, I think that's a good get for the Giants. But getting back to Clowney, here's the thing, man. We all know the kind of players that Mike Vrabel wants, right? They want relentless, tough guys that are just going to play hard and finish. He always talks about effort and finish. Can we say that, for 60 minutes about a guy like Jadeveon Clowney? He's a tremendous talent, unbelievable player. But part of me feels like if this deal was going to get done, because I keep hearing, all off season, right? Titans Twitter's been buzzing. When are we signing Clowney? It's a done deal. We're going to get Clowney. My partner on the radio, Greg Pogue, says it's a done deal. They're going to get Clowney. Why hasn't it happened yet? And you wonder, Mike Vrabel knows Jadeveon Clowney pretty well. And you kind of wonder if this deal hasn't gotten done yet. Now, this may get expedited based on some of the injuries we saw. But I'm just kind of wondering, does Jadeveon Clowney for, 3 hours of football, however many plays in an NFL game, does this guy completely 100% fit what, Mike Vrabel wants in a football player in terms of effort and finish? I don't know if I can say that. But,
I believe that he fits that.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's worth big time money.
Go ahead, Turron.
I believe that he fits that. And I believe from an effort perspective. And, honestly, with Clowney, really what you have to look at is they're still interested, right? Every time you hear Jon Robinson speak, he says that, we're still interested. There's still interest there. We're still in touch with them. So I think that's more of a positive testament to Vrabel's opinion of Clowney, but more importantly, Jon Robinson's opinion. Because if they weren't interested, they would say, hey, listen, man, we're just going to look elsewhere. So they're still interested. So I think that really says something.
I'm looking at this, and I think there are concerns, understandably, with the way that he personally has handled this situation, right? You want this guy to just get out of his own way. You want him to want to play football for your team. You want to pay him this money. At this point, it doesn't look like he's going to get more than 1 year deal. But Turron, to your point about him as a well-rounded player, him as a more complete player, if you want to make the argument for it, than Ngakoue. I've never seen a defensive lineman, or at least my experience watching football is less than you two, just simply from a not the age you guys, but from a year's perspective. I have seen less football, but I have seen few defensive linemen take over a game the way that Jadeveon Clowney last season when he was playing for Seattle did against the San Francisco 49ers. It was a masterclass in line of scrimmage work, in disruption. He was the bringer of doom for that Seattle defense that needed it in a big way. Now with Robinson, I think we kind of know what John's MO is on these kind of things. He understands that the skill set is one that they need. He understands that there's value to it. It's just how much is he willing to go? How much is he willing to overextend himself financially or otherwise to make this happen? I think that Vrabel matters very much in this. I think in the same way we talked to Will Compton today on Zoom, in the same way that Vrabel is texting Will Compton, Sunday morning, like, hey, you in shape? Let's get a workout in. I'm sure there's communication, and we don't know this to be fact, but I'm certain that there's communication between Vrabel and Clowney, given their pre-existing history together. And I guess you would just, if you are somebody who is wanting this team to sign him, you want to see that enthusiasm reciprocated from the guy that you're trying to pay. Now, he has more options than Will Compton. Obviously, those are not that's an apple and oranges comparison, to be very generous. But I don't know. I can't figure him out because what he does just doesn't make sense. Like, I think that's why I get so wrapped up in this. What he is doing just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Well, first of all, when you're talking about our ages, you got to remember TD and I grew up watching, Lawrence Taylor and Reggie White and Bruce Smith. Those guys were bad boys, right, TD?
The first name that came to mind.
When motivated, I think is it can be in that class. And Bruce Smith kind of gave him the seal of approval when he got drafted. But you're right, it's very confusing when you figure out when you try to figure out what he's doing, and part of me wonders, is he willing to just sit out a year and just chill and then come back and hit the free agent market next year? With COVID-19, we don't know what the salary cap's going to be. I imagine it's going to go down. I mean, teams are going to be losing revenue this year because there's not going to be hardly any fans in the stands and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's very confusing as to what he's doing. I'd love to just, get a peek into his mind and figure out what his MO is. I mean, I think he's motivated to play this year, but I mean, if he's got his heels dug in saying, I'm not playing for a penny less than, 18, 20, whatever it is.
Yeah, the report was 15, right. Or he'd consider.
Yeah.
Peter King went on the radio here in Nashville with our friends on Midday and said that Peter King had heard if he wasn't going to get $15 million, Clowney would consider sitting out the season.
Wow. Well, there you go. And I don't know if he's going to get $15 million. I mean,
like it.
Remember Logan Ryan didn't want a penny less than $10 million. I go back to that, and got a new agent. And now he's going to have to settle for $7.5 million with the Giants. I guess he won't eat out as much. I know. We should all be so lucky to take a pay cut like that, right?
those Jersey taxes going to hit him over the head, though. He's going home. It'll catch up.
Here's the thing: he's from Jersey. He knows where to get a good Coke and a slice. So forget about it.
No question. Let's circle back to Isaiah Wilson, Turron. What we observed yesterday as we're taping this podcast on a Tuesday, Monday's practice, the observation that you made to me while we were watching the offensive lineman, the dude just he's on the ground too much. Like he overextends himself in a way that takes him out of the play or takes him out of the rep. He's obviously a physically massive human being, and that you understand that what he's used to doing is like Vrabel talked about with DeAndre Walker, where he's been able to get away with some stuff because he can physically overpower people. You're seeing that kind of come to bear at practice through these reps, and when he's not able to beat out, or at least at this point, understanding everything is different this year than any other year, but if he can't get reps behind Dennis Kelly when Ty Sambrayo, who is a known commodity and not by any stretch of the imagination a great one, if the first-round pick for the Titans can't get on the field that way or just can't even compete that way, how concerned are you with him at this point?
I really think it's time to table any opinion, or not opinion, but any hopes of him contributing this year. I don't really see that happening. It's a conditioning thing, and you could tell just by how he gets down in his stance. He's very high, and I'm even talking about when they're run blocking, not just when they're getting down, in their 2-point to drop into, pass sets. It's high, and what ends up happening is you see him trying to fire off the ball, and his pad level is low, and it's naturally going to be pad level is high. It's naturally going to be high because of how tall he is. So that is already something he has to focus on, even when he's conditioned. One of the things that you really, and A.J. Brown kind of touched on it when he talked about fatigue with his routes later in games, that edge is taken off of the way you play the game. So for a lineman, as you get fatigued, your technique tends to fail you. And really that's what will just negate his size. Because if you have a guy like a Wyatt Ray, who I've seen on multiple occasions, get up underneath him and drive him back, it doesn't matter how big he is because he won the leverage battle. So that's a big problem. And then, as you mentioned, he's on the ground a lot. You could just tell that he's not where he wants to be. He needs to be conditioning wise. And it's interesting because when camp first started and he was out there, that was something that actually stood out to me. I was like, hey, the big fella's moving around, okay. So it's just kind of like he's hit a wall, and something is going to have to happen to click, to spark. But I really think that he's shifted into developmental mode. As far as, if I was a personnel guy, I would say that's where he is right now. And that's not to say he can't be good in the future because, you look at what happened in Georgia, it was kind of the same situation. He had that first year, he said, you know what, I need to take a step back and get acclimated. And then, that following year, he ended up, playing really good football, and eventually he got drafted in the first round.
Yeah, I have a whole lot to add to what TD said. I mean, I don't profess myself to be an expert on interior offensive line play. Maybe that was the case all along, knowing that you had, assuming he's healthy, Dennis Kelly to be your starter at right tackle, and you're going to work this kid in at some point. Maybe, like TD said, maybe, it's not his time right now. Maybe he's got to go back to the lab and just, learn how to do this on the pro level. But I think the kid's talented. I think he's got a great attitude based on what I've seen, and I think he's willing to learn. It's just a matter of, getting him NFL ready. And,
well, let me put it to you this way.
Right now.
Let me put it to you this way, though, JB, because they've done this now twice in 2 years with the first-round draft pick. The Jeffrey Simmons situation, much, much different. They felt that they could afford to have this guy miss some time out of the gate when, in reality, the goal of every NFL team is to have their first-round pick contribute in some form or fashion their rookie season. That should be the stated objective, the stated goal. Now, they got away with it last year, ended up paying huge dividends for them the way that they waited it out until week 7. What Turron is saying is that you can kind of table the idea for – now, you have a luxury in Dennis Kelly that allows you to do that. And I think a great one. Like, it could not be a better – I mean, given the circumstances, it really could not be a better situation than to have a guy like Dennis Kelly who understands the language that the offensive line speaks, who understands the scheme, who's been a piece of this offense in some form or fashion throughout the duration of his career here. But can they do this? Can they do this twice with a first-round pick that cannot make or is not ready to make an immediate impact, and you be okay with how Jon Robinson has handled it?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, because it comes to that factor of going to the well one too many times, perhaps, right? Yeah, I mean, you're right. Actually, your first, second, and third round picks are really normally guys you expect to right away. So, yeah, it is, a tad disappointing to hear that maybe this guy is not ready to contribute right away. And I don't know what it says about Jon Robinson and his ability to bring in first-round picks, because, there's still, we're still talking about Corey Davis after all these years, who, was the 5th overall pick when he came out. So I can understand where those questions come up. Am I okay with it? For now, I am, assuming that, Wilson is able to put in the time and develop and get NFL ready sooner rather than later.
I'm good with it until I'm not. Jon Burton.
Exactly. That's exactly.
Jon Burton.
That's how I roll, baby. It's good until it's not.
Bringing the fire here on the 615 Sessions podcast. Plugs on the way out the door. I appreciate my friends Turron Davenport and Jon Burton for taking some time to join us here on the pod. Both have radio shows. TD on 102.5 The Game Friday nights. Nate and TD with former Titans wide receiver Nate Washington. They had their first show last Friday. If you can't catch it live, you can get the digital version available wherever it is that you get your podcast. Rate, review, and subscribe. You can also follow him on the socials at @TDavenport_NFL and read his future pieces, one he is very excited about, on the Tennessee Titans at ESPN.com. You can get Jon Burton on your radio dial as well, weekdays 9 to 11 a.m., the Greg Pogue and Jon Burton Show on WNSR, and News Channel 5's sports coverage on a regular basis. Gentlemen, a pleasure as always. Good to be able to talk some shop with you. And, maybe next time we'll get more wrestling impressions. We'll involve Rhett Bryan. We'll make it a big show. 3-Ring Circus here on the 615 Sessions. Thanks for doing this.
Hey, anytime, man. I got the utmost respect for you and TD, Buck. You guys do a great job. And seriously, I mean, if Titans fans, these two guys are a must follow. So make sure you.
Turron, I understand. Me, I'm just here.
TD's the man. TD is the man all day. You're getting there.
Yeah, baby steps. Baby steps. A lot of, like I said, you guys are older than me. I got time. Turron Davenport and Jon Burton here on the 615 Sessions.